Being here today. Thank you all for coming today. Well, we have lots of good things to do, and thank you for being here. So we'll start with the calling to order the Community Service Committee meeting for October 19th with a roll call, please. Thank you.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Ms. Polk?
Present.
Mr. Snipes?
Present.
Ms. Peters?
Present.
Mr. Tholen? Mr. Carrico?
Present.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Present.
Ms. Bryan?
Present.
Ms. Hudson?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Alexander Hildebrand?
Present.
Mr. Raymond?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Seroy? We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have one item of public comment today. So would you come to the microphone and give us your ideas?
18.
Okay, your microphone is on. You just need to get it closer to your mouth.
I'm a little short, so I've got to do some
There you
adjustments.
go. That's wonderful. Okay. Hey, good for you.
Perfect.
All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Marta Perales, and I'm the Vice President of the Illinois Democratic Women of Kankakee County. I'm also a member of the NAACP Political Action Committee. We started the organization of the Illinois Democratic Women 2 years ago to empower women to run for office and to get involved in the political process here in our county. We were successful in getting 2 women elected, Democratic women elected to the county board 2 years ago. So it was very disappointing that the county board leadership pushed through a new county board map with significant changes with no public input or little time for county board members to study changes. What I'm concerned about in watching the redistricting committee was that the drawing of the maps came down to one person. And there were comments made that there was restrictions about the process of gerrymandering. There was also concerns about voting rights issues and concerns about the changes to the map that would alienate communities of color, especially for representation for the board. Despite all these comments that were made by the person who drew the maps, it still cut our board or cut our representation for voters, especially in African American communities. What the new map does was it is more gerrymandered than the old one. It is designed to reduce Democratic, African American, and women representation on the board. Of 7 Democrats on board, 2 were forced into primary. That's 28%. Of the 5 African Americans on the board, 2 were forced into primary. That's 40%. Of the 6 women on the board, 3 were forced into primary. That's 50%. It should be noted there are 18 white men on the board. It is questionable whether the map violates the law, but it certainly violates the spirit of the law. From what I've seen, a lot of time was meant to not tell the public what was going on. And I thought that was the whole process of being transparent. There was transparency in the beginning part of it, but as soon as that census data dropped, there was no transparency. It was a lot of talk. I do want to leave you with my last comments because what I also witnessed from the county board meeting that actually accepted the board, the new map, that it was meant to keep people quiet. No one knew what was going on. There is still yet to find I cannot find a PDF document on the Kankakee County Board website of the new maps. And I think the public deserves to have that, and we don't have that. There's nothing on there to tell us what's going on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any other public comment, but I do have a presentation. So I have in my hand here a pillow that says, "Give thanks." And I have this thank you card for Kelly, because I really appreciate all she does to get us ready for meetings.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. So you can put it behind you, you can take your nap with it, you can do whatever you want to do with it. So, but thanks for all your help.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the presentation. So now we'll turn to the minutes from September 21st. You have received them, having Kelly sent them to you, matter of fact. So would someone move that we accept them, Mr. Carrico, I'm sorry. Mr. Kirkstra, sorry, I lost my thought, will second it, and all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say aye. Motion carried. Okay, we'll turn next to, there's a request to change the agenda because Mr. Hendrickson would like to go last because he's going to give you the tour right after his presentation. So would someone move that we adjust the agenda? Ms. Peters
Polk.
and Mr. Eckhoff will second it, and all in favor of adjusting the agenda say aye.
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 Any opposed? No? Okay, it's adjusted. So Eric, that just slipped you up next then. You have in your packet or on your screen the report that would be a little bit further into the pages, and it starts with 30-day window. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. I just have a few items to go over with you this morning. So I want to let you know what we've completed since we last met, and what's left kind of in the year, or at least in the next couple of months. As Ms. Weber mentioned, the first item on my agenda here is the completion of the 30-day window to accept appeals. Right now, as of yesterday's mail, we've received 230 appeals against assessments. Last year in total, we took 280. I don't think we're done yet. I think we'll get some more in the mail in the coming days. So I don't have a final count for you, but 230 is where we're at right now, just so you have an idea. Also, right after the meeting last month in September, within a couple of days, I received the tentative equalization factor from the Department of Revenue. That tentative equalization factor certified our 3-year average at 33.30. Kind of a, if you want to call it a perfect score, is 33.33. So we're very, very close. It's 0.09% off of exactly where we should be. So I was pretty happy with that. So that's one of the things that I work hard to try to make sure we get really close to 33 1/3. So that leaves us with some things that, now that those things are complete, we need to move on to the next phase, and part of that is Board of Review hearings, which will start on November 2nd, I believe it is. Yeah, that's a Tuesday. It'll be November 2nd. That's our first day for hearings. We'll need to handle any final abstract equalization, and that would be if we lost more than 1% of value through the Board of Review process. It typically doesn't happen, so I have on the report here, final abstract equalization, if any, but typically it doesn't happen. But I do need to be aware if we need to do something. Otherwise, the state would have to give us an equalization factor, and we don't really want to see that happen if we don't have to. So then my final step for the year is to deliver the final abstract documentation to the county clerk, which I typically try to do by the end of the year, before the end of the year, and that's still the goal, unless for some reason we're not able to schedule the last of the hearings right before Christmas. Then it might spill into just the very early part of January, which we would still be fine if we did that. But I think we'll be able to complete things like we have in the past and get things done by the end of the year, hopefully. So that concludes my report. I'll go ahead and accept any questions if anybody has any.
I would like to, before we begin that, let's ask for a motion to approve his report, the county clerk report, the recorder report, animal control report. Okay, Mr. Smith, Ms. Hudson.
Polk. Oh,
Next time, Ms. Polk, I'll get you. Okay,
okay.
any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed say no? Okay. Did you say no?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay. Motion carried. The one thing I'd like to mention to you is I saw the assessor yesterday from Pilot at the post office, where you always see people in Herscher if you want to talk with them. And I asked him about if he'd received any review questions, and he said yes, because all the people in our township received a letter, and that causes often more reviews. And what he likes to do, and he's able to in many cases, is settle it, can cooperate with the person before it gets to the hearing, and that you appreciate that too. So I think that's what my point is. If people have a question about their assessment changes, talk to their assessor before they ask for the hearing.
And that is true. That goes on our assessment change notice that you mentioned. The first step is to meet with your township assessor. Sometimes the process can be resolved, between the two parties. An appeal has to still officially be logged, but there may be an agreement between the assessor and the taxpayer, before there's some kind of a hearing where the Board of Review needs to kind of pick and choose between two different numbers. It may have already been settled, and a lot of times that works very well if the assessor recognizes, yeah, the assessment's a little bit high, or the appellant has a point to their appeal. So it does work well.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a matter of just measuring again or looking again at things, he said.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Are there any other comments people would like to make about that assessment and the review and the hearings? So you're on target and schedule.
That is true.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that report.
Have a nice day, folks.
You too, please. To Ms. Gadboy. You can find her reports on at least 2 pages. We're especially looking at September's numbers on the one page, and then all the year's worth of numbers on the other.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So what you have is at 179,742 for September.
Yep.
And that is a fine number, more than last year for sure, and way more than the year before that, and consistent with what's been going on for the year.
So really, to gauge what's going on, you always want to look at what the state stamps number is. And you see that number is considerably more than typical. So that's telling you that there are more transactions taking place where property is changing hands, or maybe property is being purchased to be building something new, which is always good. Mm-hmm. So I'm always going to say there's good things going on in Kankakee County. People just don't always know it. Mm-hmm. So you're always going to hear it from me.
So the numbers you're talking about are 55,000 for September of this year's state stamp versus last year at 43,000.
Right.
So that's a quantity of numbers.
And if you then take that and calculate it $1 per thousand, which is what is paid to the state, that gives you a lot more zeros to look at and see what is really happening month to month in our county.
And 28,000 the year before. So
Right.
that's really lots lower,
Right.
isn't it?
Yeah, so there,
trend.
I'm telling you, there's good things, yes.
Does the increase in the numbers reflect the
Wait, I didn't get you
Oh,
on
you need
here.
to turn that.
I think you're okay, right?
Does the increase in the numbers represent an increase in property value? Are they tied to that in any way, or just the number of transactions?
I can't tell you its property value because it goes from the smallest of purchasing a lot to the largest of buying a huge commercial space. So we would really have to go in and look at each individual transaction, and then you would really need to speak with an appraiser because I really don't stay in tune to property values.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Clarifies it. Well, it gives you an
Yeah.
answer anyhow.
I'm going to tell you next month you're going to see another big number, and we had one very large commercial transaction that is probably going to make up a third of the number.
Okay,
Good enough.
And that was just one transaction.
because property values have increased.
Oh
so-
yeah,
but-
somewhat, yes.
All right.
Mr. Snipes.
Mr. Snipes, question?
Yes. Now, from the tax sales, are those also reflected into these numbers whenever there are, when they're finally realized?
No. So when there's a tax sale, they do not pay state and county revenue stamps. So the number that you see on the report for number of deeds for the month, like for the month of September, we received 129 tax deeds going from the county to the county trustee, which was there's no revenue against those particular 129 deeds, but they are recorded in the office, so it reflects the number of deeds recorded. We're going to see the benefit from that when they have the auction. And then when the process is complete, the payments have been made, and those deeds are issued and then recorded. But there's no state and county revenue stamps when it comes to that particular type of transaction.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
But we still win because
Yeah.
we're getting property back on the tax rolls.
Yeah. So it's a good process for
Yes.
sure. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Okay.
No other questions?
Thank you.
Great. All right.
job.
Everyone have a wonderful rest of your September.
And turn
Same to you.
next to animal control.
Or October.
Well, September.
Isn't it?
Yeah. We're going.
About September. You're October.
Would you please, as Carrie comes forward, turn to the report that says Animal Control Department for the month of September. What highlights would you like to highlight?
I really don't have a whole lot. Just our inventory obviously has gone up quite a bit. I'm sure you guys read about in the paper about the 25 cats and 2 dogs we impounded from Moments. Those have all since gone to rescue except for the 2 dogs. Our numbers are still increasing for cats and dogs. We're too many animals for the space that we're in right now. One thing I did want to point out was the euthanasia totals for the fees for the year. It is a lot, but those are owner surrender euthanasia, so those have gone up quite a bit.
And
those don't help our numbers for our euthanasia total at the end of the year because those are owner surrenders. So it looks like we euthanize a lot of animals. Again, a lot of them have been owner surrender animals.
for various reasons.
For euthanasia.
But they bring them to be euthanized for various
Correct,
reasons, whether
yes.
they're old or hurt or.
Correct, yes.
Something
And
like
we are a less expensive route to take than a veterinarian.
Oh. The numbers that I'd like to point out that are good numbers that was the focus here is that if you look under the 4th line down under fines, one of the focuses that we were hoping for when this transition to a different management was that the fines would go up, but the animal population would go down. So the fines were last year $763, this year twice more than that, $1,550. And I count that, and you help me here. Is that because your staff is full, or is that because you're more aggressive? Which
We have, it's both. We have the more animals we impound, the more fees we have because the animals come in, owners reclaim them, which you can see the owner reclamations are 312 for the year. So they come in, they receive the fees and fines, we impound their animal, and then they go home. So, you know, those are responsible owners that come and reclaim their pets. So they are getting fees and fines, but that's to get them to not leave their pets loose anymore, in a sense.
hopefully. And in that last year, total of fines were $10,000. This year it's 20.
Correct.
Yes.
2009. As John or Terry can say, at court, it's very interesting. It's a very full day at court with our officers.
He's shaking his head, I think. Is that a certain day? Is that a day?
It's the OV court, which is, I think it's believed today.
One day a month? Mm-hmm. And so everybody shows up and goes through.
Yes, so our officers are very busy those days.
The other is, I'd like to mention, is the donations, not so much for the month to date, but to the year to date, that last year's donations were $1,900, this year $9,300. So people are aware and helping you out there.
We have had quite a few big donations come in. One is because of the beginning of January when we had that incident that happened in St. George. That was a significant amount of donations that came in. We have had a couple in the meantime. People are nice when they come in and they owe $25 and they'll just say, well, here's 40, type of thing. So it has been nice that they recognize that there is a need for, our services, and they realize that, we're not bad people like everybody else wants to make us out to be.
Comma.
We did a microchip clinic this past weekend at the farmer's market. We had lots of interest. We did 20 animals. And people asked if we were coming back again. We won't be back again this year, but next year we'll probably do a couple of them. Then it was very successful. So one animal was successful to me. We did 20. So.
And that would be, I mean, that was some notice, but not large notice.
Correct.
So it may be in some cases they said, oh, well, let me go home and get the animal.
They did. A couple of them did. Yeah. I mean, we were there for 4 hours. 20 animals is a lot. $15. So we only had a couple that were a little emotional. The animals were. So, yeah. But we gave them treats and they were happy.
A concern is under village revenue, though, that the month total last year was $25,000. This month was $2,000. So is somebody not paying their bill, or they don't pay it in this month?
They are a little bit behind. Same with registration. They are a little bit behind. They don't always pay right when the checks or when the bills go out. So registration is going to be a little different this month. We have quite a bit right now. Same with village revenue. It doesn't always get recorded at the same time.
Okay, and then the inventory that you sort of mentioned before is under animal inventory, beginning of the month, 10 cats, 25 cats, 10 dogs. And what you said is it currently, what currently is it?
I'd probably say around 18 dogs and around probably that many cats.
Wow.
Maybe
So
even
full,
more.
Full house.
It's definitely full. Our 2 kennel techs work hard every day.
One thing you mentioned is that you were able to get a tarp for the outside walk.
So with those donations, we were able to get some tarps to go over the runs outside. So we have 7 of the 15-ish that are covered right now. I have tarps in my office just to put the other ones on the rest of the runs. I would like to get new runs, but if we're moving a building, I don't want to get new runs only to have them not being utilized in the next building. So as of right now, we're using what we have and trying to make, do with what we have.
But that helps, what you have done.
It does. It helps for all the elements. Dogs were outside for about 2 hours yesterday, just laying outside. So it was nice to see them out there in the air, and some were on beds and some were just hanging out and being nice to each other, which is nice. No barking. 2
other things. One is how many funds do you have if there were a purchase of a building? Is that the number
that's the 416,000.
416,000. So you're saying if you're thinking of getting a building, what do you have to contribute? You'd say 416,000
in cash.
In cash, liquid money. It is not a bond or anything like that. And the other one was, what do you need?
We can always use cat food. We did have those 25 cats come in. We did have them for a couple days, and then we can always use cat food. That's something that wet cat food, dry cat food we get from a local vendor, but wet cat food is something that they appreciate, and it's just one of those additional expenses that, if we can have donations on that, we appreciate. Toys is always, needed for any of the animals.
Is that, everybody hear those things? And how do we get them to? Will the sheriff pick them up from us then? Or?
he didn't hear that one. Yeah.
No. Well, it's best to bring them to your house.
Bring them to my house too, but my office, my office or the sheriff's office, whatever's more convenient. I can pick them up from there. I'm there every Wednesday.
Is that a place you know where it is? Do you know where animal control is? Everybody? Okay. I'll just go back. Behind 57 or over from 50 or whichever one it's right.
Yeah.
Grinnell Road is a good way to say it. Yes, please wait till I turn on 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carrie, have you noticed, and I have because I have the Mafia, have you noticed that there is less cat food on the shelves right now?
I have not. I don't have a cat. I've not gone out and looked, but we have received quite a few donations, but I didn't know that was, there are more cats out in, the world, the county, than there were before. So there are quite a few cats out there. That's where we're finding more strays and all those kind of things. So it makes sense there would be not as much cat food.
But is there then a certain food, because I know our picky little ones, now we went through Chewy and they have been on back order, which is frightening to have hungry
Right.
cats in our house. But have you noticed that? Is there any kind of food that we can get?
The pate style, so we can hide pills in it, something like that. I mean, cats don't always take pills in their food, but we have to try and do
wet.
that. They'll eat anything, really. I mean, these cats were, on the streets at one time mostly, so they're kind of really not that picky. Some of them do become picky when they come in there. They discover it's a routine and they get what they want. So we are finding ways to, get those cats whatever they want sometimes. So, but yeah.
And then last of all, if you turn to the next page, which is a sideways page, the specific statistical, the intake of or surrendered by owner were 15 dogs and a couple puppies. Stray dogs were 33. That's what your officers are doing then, is that? And then impounded other than stray, for a total of 62 intake. But we go down to the next one, the even better as well, is returned to own or reclaimed by the owner, and that's the one where if they're reclaimed, those 24 needed to have updated shots and other things before they could leave.
Correct.
Which is income for you also then too. So, and then the other was that you had mentioned before, the total euthanasia 14 and 7 elected by the owner. So, you have any questions on that back page? It's a very accurate and accurate page. So, Mr. Sipes.
So for what I'm reading here, it says owner reclaimed year to date. That means 312 individuals have reclaimed their pets. The owners have reclaimed their particular pets.
Yes.
And then of those adopted, there's 334. That's total. Now, is that number reflective of those that you send to the other shelters, or?
So it says adoption on there, but it's transferred and adoption. So those are combined. But yes, those 334 were transferred or adopted in 2021.
Oh, okay.
And what you are is comfortable in those transfers that they have good end results.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, good report. Thank you so much. Do you want to stay here just a second? We'll see. Tinker, do you have something to add for the welfare committee?
I do, Madam Chairman. We met last week? Yes, last week. And the meeting itself, we didn't know how it was going to turn out, but it was the most productive meeting I think that we have had so far this year. I invited, and we all invited Karen Himza, who is the owner of Sunrise, and we were talking about the TNVR and different ways. And we finally came up with a little bit of healthy discussion of where we can move forward. And we want to just thank Carrie and for the input and working with Karen during that meeting. I think that we're going to be moving forward with a plan. So I don't think we're able to really discuss it right now, as all the plans haven't been laid out yet.
Right.
But at least this time we have hope of moving forward with the population of the cats and the colonies.
Well, it was just a good explanation, a good appearance of working together.
Oh, yes.
And the need for the 10,000 cats to be helped out that are in the county. So yeah,
We have always been, we've melded now. This is our 5th year now, Andy, yes? It's our 5th year, going into our 6th, and we have such a working relationship now with the Sheriff's Department and Carrie's Department and the shelters that it's all very healthy relationships now, very productive, and I think that this committee has proved to be very well needed. It's been well needed. So thank you for that, Chairman Wheeler, of putting this together. So we're looking for more. By the end of the year, I think by the beginning of next year, we're going to have a plan.
Further than we are now, for sure.
Yes, where we were a year ago,
Yeah,
definitely.
right.
So thank you, Carrie and Mr. Coughlin, for everything.
Sure.
One of the things that's positive too is that the University of Illinois Veterinary Clinic Hospital volunteers a bus of students, veterinary students, who will come a week at a time and help with the neutering process for cats, and that's
Yeah.
powerful, So it's all a part of where, when, and are they volunteers? I believe they're volunteers.
They're students, so yeah, that's what Karen had mentioned, that she works with U of I frequently, and that they are doing her a favor, she's doing them a favor by getting them the hands-on that they need for their practicals for.
So that was some of the good news. Okay,
It was really good news.
6,
When does Animal Welfare Committee meet?
second Wednesday, 2 o'clock, second floor. Second Wednesday,
All is
2
welcome.
o'clock, second floor. And I can tell you, 222, the next meeting is
November?
11/10, 2/1, 11/10, November 10th.
Thank you.
Please come if you would like.
Yes.
You're welcome, always. Anything else? Good report, thank you, Karen. Anything else, Tinker, you want to add about that? No?
No, other than, thank you for bringing that up of our next, we welcome any and all. We have a new member, Adam Minton, who will be coming on from Natural, is it Resources?
Yes.
It's Natural Resources, so he'll be joining us. And again, having all the different voices at the table has just been a benefit to the entire population of animals.
The other thing Carrie had mentioned to us is that the new vehicle that you have is being, cages are being placed in your new vehicle to use, is that right? Isn't that something you had said?
So currently, Kankakee Truck is working on the vehicle. They will be putting cages in there.
Yeah, so it'll be a usable.
By the end of the year, we'll have a new vehicle.
Okay, please come ahead. Thank you.
Get one from the sheriff.
We approved one of your reports, so you want to tell us about, or what would you like to do first? What would you like to do, Mr. Henderson?
I would like to hit the lottery.
Okay.
If we could make the resolution to make that happen, that would be awesome.
All in favor, say aye.
The big one, the mega.
I'm not fussy at this point. Before we get started, I wanted to tip my hat to my Chief Deputy, Lori Thatcher. Lori celebrated her 15-year anniversary a couple months ago.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, part of being a chief deputy is that, you know, you're a good soldier. You follow the vision and the mission of the office. You know, sometimes that requires her to be a good therapist too. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge her on her anniversary and thank her for all of her service, not only to me but to everybody in Kankakee County. Now don't screw up the presentation. After you all voted on the new county board districts, I had to get to work on making some changes to our precinct lines. One of the things that we wanted to factor in when we were creating new precinct lines is you know, part of the problem that we have is that we're diminishing judges. You know, our judges, our judge bank isn't what it used to be. So some of that we had to consider, you know, do we consolidate some precincts? And we did do some consolidation of precincts. But also when we were drawing our lines, part of the thought process was, do we want to disrupt the voters? And we wanted to minimize the disruption to the voters as much as we possibly could. You know, people for at least 10 years have been voting in a particular location, and we want to honor that to the best of our ability where we can. So if we could bring up the one PDF file. Most of our precincts, most of our townships have no boundary changes. So we're just going to talk about the polling places that are changed for starting with the June primary election and going forward. The first one that we're looking at is what would be the new Bourbon A2, which is old Bourbon A2 and 3 combined. So that's basically those two put together. A little bit of change on the far north end of the precinct. You see, you know, forgive me, I don't know subdivisions as well, but that section right there where that pointer is, that's an addition to that precinct.
Is that
So
145 there?
that is Career Center Road on the west boundary.
Okay.
And I believe that's Burns Road on the north end. So that's part of that. And then down in the far south end of that precinct, That portion that was like on Roy and what have you, that is in a different county board district now, so that we moved that over into Bourbon A17, and we'll talk about that when we get to the next one. If you can move to the next precinct, please. Bourbon A3. Bourbon A3 largely didn't change. It is renumbered from what was old Bourbon A20. That polling place is still Cornerstone Church. Just a little bit of the land that was taken away that's been moved into Bourbon A2 now. Okay. Next one we have is Bourbon A6. Largely the same. Just a little bit over there by where Anita is. I think that's up on the far north. That's been added to that precinct. So other than that, the precinct line didn't change. Next one is Bourbon A9. That's old Bourbon A21. Still votes at Riverside Health and Fitness. Just some minor changes. If you look over where on the far southwest portion, that's been added into that precinct. The next precinct is Bourbon A10. That was largely a square precinct, but up in that top corner, the northeast corner, that's been taken out of that precinct and added to Bourbon A13. We can go to the next precinct, Bourbon A13. If you see that little dangling tooth down at the center bottom, over to the, that's the portion of Bourbon A10 that's been moved. Okay. Next precinct, Bourbon A14, largely the same, just a small section over there by Lois Lane on the far south, and Stadium Drive has been added into that precinct. Other than that, there have been no changes. Bourbon A17, same precinct lines except for that addition of Roy and Bedoin and Convent that's over there on the northwest corner of the precinct. So other than that, no changes to the precinct lines. Next one, that's it for Bourbon A. Kankakee precincts, we largely left untouched. However, the two precincts that we had in Kankakee, Kankakee 6 and 7, we are going to combine and still be voting at the Civic Auditorium. They will now be Kankakee Precinct 5. And the next precinct is Kankakee 9. That's Kankakee, old Kankakee 14 and Kankakee 15. People that were voting at Pioneer Park and at City Life will now be voting, everybody will be voting at City Life. Okay. Other than that, there are no changes to any of the Kankakee precincts. Manteno, because of the changes in county board lines and the legislative lines, we had to do a little bit more changes with that than the rest of the townships. That's largely the same lines for Bourbon A, or Manteno 1. Did lose some portion on the eastern boundary that will be picked up by Manteno 2, which is the next one. And you see that's changed a little bit. Manteno 3 will be the next one. They picked up some of that other land from Manteno 1. And then Manteno 4 is going to be Manteno 4 and Manteno 6 combined. Everybody will be voting at the Manteno Township building. And that's it for the changes in Manteno. Otto, we did reconfigure some of the lines. We did have people that were down in the far southwest corner of the township that were voting at the Joint Armed Forces Center. We're going to send them to the Shabanza Zion Lutheran Church now, as opposed to having them go all the way there. And then the other portion, I'm sorry, that was the first one, that was the north portion of Otto Township. They will be voting at the Joint Armed Forces Center. Then the next precinct is the southern portion of Otto Township, goes right down 5,000 line. So that's pretty clean. The next one, Pilot Township, I believe. Do we have that one on there? Yeah. We had two precincts in Pilot. we've historically had an issue getting sufficient number of judges to work there, so we're going to combine those two back into one precinct. Pilot was one precinct, I want to say probably about 20 years ago, and we're going to put them back as one precinct for at least for the next 2 elections. So I believe that's it for the polling place changes. We do have 2 new polling places. Bourbon A14, which isn't on the map here, they were voting at Calvary Bible Church. Calvary Bible Church had a lot of people going there, so we tried to take some of the burden off of there and move the voters in Bourbon A18 to Adventure Christian Church, right behind the mall. And the voters at Essex, they've been voting at the Village Hall. We've heard from the judges, and we're going to be moving them to the Essex Community Building.
They will be so grateful.
They will.
Oh my goodness.
Hopefully they will be happy.
They will be so happy.
Apart from that, does anybody have any questions?
Do any of you have a question, or Mr. Snipes, a question?
Generally, I vote yes, but I would have to do no into the 7th until we talk to some of the individuals. Have you all sent anything out? Because
we haven't sent anything out because I don't want to send something out that's going to be.
I'm talking about to like the other commissioner that's there.
I've spoken to Mr. Hunter about those changes, and he didn't have any issues with those. If you're talking specifically about old Bourbon or Kankakee 14 and 15,
right? Because they used to have the firehouse, and then they had Pioneer Park.
Right.
To me, I think it's okay with the City Life because it's right across the street. But I just wanted to make sure that
City Life is an ideal polling place for that section of town. So
I just wanted to make sure they talk, because the last time that the thing they said that no one talked with them. So I just want to make sure.
Yep. Yeah, I've spoken with Mr. Hunter. I spoke with him about that about a month or so ago when we were looking at the possibility of doing that.
And then the 7th ward that where we are goes into still in precinct 10.
Well, we don't have a 10. 10 will be part of Kankakee 6 now.
10, 6.
Yes. Just renumbering. We did have, when we'd done some consolidations before, we had gaps in the numbering, so we've cleaned up the numbering.
I think it was.
We were through 15, but we didn't have a 5. We didn't have a 9. So all of that's gotten shifted.
Okay, so where they are, if they're in...
It's Kankakee Precinct 6. It will still be Asbury. Polling place didn't change, boundaries didn't change.
Oh, okay, just the number.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Well, the good news is once you settle, and once we have a motion to approve your suggestions, then we'll get new voting cards, right?
Well, we'll need to, 2 things that we need to wait on. Obviously needs to go through full board. Once it gets through full board, assuming there are no changes congressional lines. I don't know if you've all seen the new congressional map. Now that's a proposed map, and putting political feelings aside on that, if you're going to put Kankakee into 2 congressional townships, just taking 1 township out of there, for me, coding voters is about the cleanest way that you can do it. That being said, I don't believe that that's the final map, and we'll know for sure within the next 2 weeks or so what the final map will look like. If there is something that were to happen that would to radically change, if there was something that drove basically a congressional line down the middle of Kankakee, we would probably want to revisit what we're looking at as far as precinct lines.
Would you?
Yeah. One of the things that we have to do with congressional lines, and we haven't had to worry about this since 1999, we have to report presidential totals by congressional township. So obviously we want to make sure that we've got voters coded, so if you're in this precinct, you're in this congressional township or this congressional township, not a precinct that's got part of a congressional district in it. That's a little bit probably too much inside baseball, but
that's a lot of ballots besides.
Right.
Ms. Bryant?
I just have a question about the Pioneer Park City Life one. Is Pioneer Park more centrally geographically located within that precinct?
I think for the totality of that precinct, City Life is better. It's got more parking. It's on a main thoroughfare. I think that works better than Pioneer Park. We've had some issues with Pioneer Park before. I don't remember if you were on the board at the time, but we had to have an emergency move out of there because they had some flooding issues or ice issues that caused us not to have it available.
People who walk would have to cross 4 lanes of traffic.
Understand that.
You know,
there is a stoplight right there though, so they could cross with the light, so it wouldn't be they would just be walking.
Okay.
And as always, with all of our voters, early voting is still available, and ballot voting by mail is also available.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He's got his answers ready, doesn't he? That's good. I like those too. Mr. Snipes again.
The reason I think it's more conducive because even if you had a waiting line, there's right next door is McDonald's. So it's always a cooling spot.
Cooling spot.
Well, we might need a cooling spot for the June primary. Usually in most of our elections, cooling spots aren't a big issue.
Or heating if it was.
Exactly.
But it's in June now.
The City Life Center is a great big room.
It's a great facility for a polling place, and they've been very gracious with us as far as being accommodating. So,
Does anybody else whose precinct has been affected have any comments on it, or what you would say is they probably have talked with you already?
You know, I haven't talked to everybody, and for those that might be affected, I apologize for that. But I think that, you know, I've tried to minimize the disruption, and even on those polling places where the boundaries changed, they aren't radical changes.
Just a slice.
Right, and that, you know, makes it, like I said earlier, makes it easier for the voters. You know, if I've been voting here for 20 years, I'd like to keep voting there so that, you know, we send out the cards, but not everybody pays attention to the stuff we send out, so.
So if you're okay, then, let's see, Mr. Kirkster, would you like to move that we accept these? If you're not, Ms. Polk might.
Yes.
Okay, she will move to accept the precinct boundary changes as presented.
I will second.
Okay, Ms. Bryant will second.
And also the new polling places.
And also the new polling places. Is that okay with you, Ms. Polk? You agree with me?
Yes.
Okay, and rest? Okay, so new polling places, new precinct boundary changes is the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say aye or no? Motion is carried. So,
Thank you. I don't have anything else. If anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
any new or old business?
Bless your hearts.
Then what our plan is here, we will move to adjourn. Mr. Cookster, would you would do that, and Ms. Peters will second. I'm sorry, I'll get you next time. All in favor of adjourning but not leaving, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say aye. Okay, motion is carried.